Hi, this week we're going to look at both probability distributions and an introduction to inferential statistics. In looking at probability distributions, we have to consider discrete probability distributions versus continuous probability distributions. So a discrete probability distribution is where X, your random variable, can take on only whole numbers. For instance, the number of cars that you drive or the number of children that you have, they could take on the values 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to spend some time looking at discrete probability distributions. In particular, we're going to look at the binomial distribution. And we'll look at it in terms of calculating probabilities, and we'll use Excel to calculate those probabilities. But we think about the binomial distribution when there's two possibilities. It's either heads or tails, or the patient lives or they die, or you make the sale or you don't make the sale. So with the binomial distribution, we're looking at two outcomes, and we're going to talk about how many trials. N represents the number of trials. How many times are you flipping the coin? Or how many customers did you call on? And then we're going to also consider the probability for any one outcome. So what is the probability that you'll make a sale? That is your P. And based on that, we can figure out, for instance, if you had 10 sales calls, what is the probability that you'll make a sale in 3 or more of those sales calls? And so we'll look at that. There'll be a video on how to do that in Excel. And then the other distribution that we look at as far as discrete probability distributions, that's the Poisson distribution. And we use the Poisson distribution when we're interested in the number of occurrences in an interval of time or space. So how many cars will arrive at the drive-through in the next 30 minutes? Or how many ambulances arrives at the hospital in a 5-hour period? So we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the Poisson distribution, and we'll use Excel to determine those probabilities. Then the other probability distribution that we're going to look at is a continuous probability distribution. That bell-shaped curve that you've looked at probably your whole life, especially if you ask if grades are curved, you probably don't want to use the normal distribution or the bell-shaped curve. But we'll spend some time looking at the normal distribution, and we will also use Excel to calculate probabilities for the normal distribution. Then, the last part of this week, we're going to spend time looking at inferential statistics. We're just going to start our journey with inferential statistics. So we're going to look at confidence intervals. And so confidence intervals are where we make an inference about a population parameter, maybe the mean, based on a sample. And so we'll spend some time discussing what that represents. We'll talk about it in our live session. And then the other component that we'll look at this week in inferential statistics is looking at tests of hypotheses. So if you have two vendors and you wanted to know, is there a significant difference in some parameter for the two vendors, you could collect some sample data and then determine if there's a significant difference between the vendors. So we'll talk about tests of hypotheses, how to set up the hypotheses, how to calculate the statistics using Excel, how to interpret those values. So we'll spend our live session looking at inferential statistics.